All right. So today we're having François. I want to welcome François. It's awesome having you here. Thanks for joining us.
No, thank you for having me. Thank you.
Yes, and you know this, François, but I always like to introduce myself. I'm Alejandro Garcia-Amaya, founder of the Techstars Alumni and AnswerBite. I'm going to give a little bit of background on François here. So François Fournier is a seasoned event marketing strategist with over 20 years of experience in the field. François has designed impactful global event strategies for corporate and nonprofit organizations in the financial services and SaaS industries across continents. Currently, he heads the event marketing strategy at DTN, where he oversees around 75 trade shows and conferences annually, along with major corporate events like the Global Sales Kickoff and the President's Club for Top Performers. Previously, François led a significant team at Fitch Ratings and managed extensive event operations for Accord and Assurant. A native of Paris and a graduate from the Lausanne Hospitality Business School, François now lives in the US, bringing advanced ROI measurement insights into the event planning industry. Thanks, François, for sitting through that, through your background here. So you've had a rich background in the event marketing and a notable track record of driving event strategies. Can you share what initially drew you to the field of events inside marketing and management? So maybe a little bit of your journey.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I actually ended up working in events. It's not necessarily what I wanted to do, to be honest with you. I went to hotel management school, like you said, in Switzerland. And when I graduated, I was not sure what I wanted to do, but I wanted to go to the US. And when you graduate from a university in Europe, some university will give you 18 months working visa to move to the US. So I kind of, took the opportunity and starting to reach out to hotels, and ended up working for an event company, a small event management company that did events for, insurance organization, trade show for banks. So that was really my exposure for 5 years, really into the creation of a program, sponsorship, having people, exhibiting, program management. So that was really where I learned about, all the details about operation, marketing, sales. So it was an amazing experience, 5 years in Miami. That's where I moved, from Switzerland. So this was really my first exposure on that. I really liked it. So then I always continue within events, always on the client side, organizing events for corporation. So that was, how I joined the event industry.
I love it. And now you're in New Jersey, right? Is that where home is for you?
Exactly, very close to New York.
Do you miss Miami at all, or no? Or
Yeah.
New Jersey's it's a new journey, and with family and all of that.
So, I've been 20 years in the US, 10 in Miami and a bit more than 10 in New Jersey, New York area. So it's so different, right? I mean, Miami was great. I think it's, I had a great time, but I was missing, I'm gonna be honest with you, I was missing the Four Seasons. I was missing the feel of a big city. My kids were born in Miami. After like 10 years, I was like, I think it's time to, try to find a city where I could really get, like a walk on the Four Seasons, on the maybe more culture.
Yeah.
But I love to go back in Miami. I have some of my in-laws are in Miami. I love to visit. And I'm seeing the booming, right? The economical booming after COVID. And it's a very important place for events now, South Florida and technology.
Right. That is very true. I do agree about the seasons. When you don't have them, things just fly by. Like you don't have a measurement of, where you are right now. Is it supposed to be fall? Is it supposed to, yeah. So that's
Exactly.
nice. I'm glad you're enjoying that in the Northeast side. So I wanna give a little background on DTN. So in your role at DTN, you manage impressive global presence, overseeing, we mentioned over 75 conferences, trade shows, customer events annually for the energy, weather, and agricultural technology sectors. Who are DTN's customers, and like what problem is DTN helping them solve? I know it cuts across a number of different segments.
Yes. So our customers are they're companies with complex supply chains within, like you mentioned, agriculture, energy, weather industries. So that includes companies that are dealing with aviation, transportation, safety, utilities. Think about outdoor sports in the weather space, right? So it's basically companies that could have, for example, an outdoor event, and they need to know and get ready and prepare for the weather that could impact their operations. We work with associations, with a high school, for example, with a golf organization having, big tournaments, airlines operation, pilots, shipping companies. So they need to really have an accurate understanding of, the weather, how it's coming to them, how to get ready, how to prepare. So we're software companies, right? So it's a global organization which is operating in those three industries: agriculture, energy, and weather.
Where did it start? Do you know where it started? Was agriculture where you kind of grabbed your foothold in, or was it the weather or the energy? Like where was it that you started gaining your customers?
So it's a great question. I know it's a companies that grew by acquisition, and they had different ownership in the past. I know about so I think the company is probably about 30 to 35 years old.
Wow. Okay.
But I'm trying to say what came first. I think agriculture has a very important role. So I'm not sure. It's a great question to be honest with you.
And that's fine. And I was actually going to ask you, related to your world in the event space, which one does receive a lot more attention? Is there a particular sector that there's way more attention when it comes to the event space?
So I would say that energy trading, we're really the leader in that field. So it's very specific on we're the leader in that space. Weather industry is really the one with a lot of competition. It's getting a lot of attention right now. Obviously, we're starting the hurricane season. We have the flooding, the wildfire. So we have all these elements that draws the attention in the media, right? About the weather and the global warming, So weather draws a lot of attention, and there's a lot of events around weather technology. Where agriculture is very focused. We have there's 3 or 4 really big agribusiness trade shows, mostly in the US. So I think weather is the one that really right now draws a lot of attention.
How do you tailor the strategies so that they can be effective and engage within each group? So you mentioned that the weather seems to be the one that grabs a lot more attention, but how do you go about in your calendar, in your annual calendar, and in all these massive events that take place? How do you go about figuring out what makes sense for DTN to participate in, and how do you strategize that?
So, looking at the competition is one, right? So weather is a very highly competitive market. So, when we look at our competitor, where are they going? What trade shows are they, sponsoring, exhibiting at, or speaking at? So we're very specific when it comes to the attendance. So we are looking for really targeted audience, specific shows, with the type of titles that we'll be targeting, head of operations, for example, in the weather, area. And we basically have a whole strategy when it comes to promoting our presence at events. So when it comes to, we run a digital marketing campaign ahead of the events, after the show. And we really try to also push our experts in those different fields to speak at this conference. So trade shows that allow us, for example, to present a case study where we'll bring an end user That will be a really important component for us, right? Be able to obviously exhibit, but participate as a speaker where we could present with our clients. I think it sends a very powerful message to an audience. So this is what we're looking for in terms of defining.
That makes a ton of sense. Events often involve collaboration with various stakeholders. What have been some of the best ways to foster great collaboration between internal teams, external partners, vendors, to ensure success for an event?
Yeah. So
what has worked for you? And are there pitfalls that you've learned to avoid throughout the years?
Good question. So one thing we're trying to do is when we have an event and we know that we're going to have, top clients, existing prospects, people we've been talking to, partners, what we're trying to do is we look at the agenda of the event and we try to piggyback on a client advisory board meeting, like we call them CAB. So what we do is, let's say there's a trade show that ends, on a Thursday at noon. What we will do with the authorization, obviously, of the organizer, we will run a meeting that afternoon, either at the same location or in town at the same city. And we will basically design a program where we will invite, a few of our clients, prospects, and it will be kind of an exchange of ideas, like a workshop, intimate settings. And then we'll take them out for dinner, for example. So we try to do that, and we try to promote that ahead of time so that they plan accordingly their travel. So that's something that have worked out well for us. Identifying the right event, look at the audience, making sure that people are here where we are going to be there as well, and getting their feedback, their attention for that afternoon. So that's something that we've done recently and has worked really well.
François, how many events are hosted by the corporation, and how many are ones that obviously you participate as a sponsor and all that? Like if there was a percentage breakdown or something like that, what would that look like?
So yeah, high percentage of I will say external events, right? Whether it's a sponsorship, exhibit, speaking, sometimes we just attend, right? We just walk the show. I would say that 75% of the events we do are external events, and then the remaining are a global event. We have a global sales conference. We have an incentive program called President's Club. And then we run those CABs meetings, right? Like small client events for the energy, weather, agriculture. So yeah, I would say a breakdown of 75-25.
So this next question is kind of the universal one when we talk about how do you measure success and impact of an event. And so I want to break that down into events that are internal, right? Like how do you measure success for an event like that global sales conference? And then how do you measure success for one that you're sponsoring, an external event that you go out there and you're sponsoring? How do you look between those two worlds? Yeah. And are there certain key performance indicators, KPIs that you keep track of? Like what's your go-to when you're trying to figure that out?
So it's a great question. It's always a question that comes back when I go to like industry events or when I talk to my peers. It's always come back. It's how do you measure? How do you evaluate the success of a commercial event, right? And I think I remember it was 10 years ago. We're also talking about that, but the difference nowadays is we have very high cost of producing an event. Right now, when you go to a trade show, 50% of my budget is going towards audiovisual equipment, rental furniture. So now things have changed because it's more expensive to go to an event, and it's also more expensive to sponsor an event. So
so it's more expensive to host an event, and it's more expensive to also sponsor an event like this.
Absolutely. Price has been really dramatically on the rise. But when you look at trade shows, not only the price of sponsoring has increased tremendously, but the price of being there, with a booth has exploded. So now, the leadership team is basically asking for a very detailed reporting. And when you do 65 events a year, you have to find a way to measure, what you're doing, because otherwise, what's happening is you just go back to the same events. Nobody really pay attention to the ROI on without any analysis, you're just like, wasting resources. So the way we do it is we look at, and I'm just talking about trade shows. So we look at the number of qualified conversation, with salespeople. On it goes about engagement. Like, I want to know about how many conversations they had during demos. Could be having dinner with customer, drinks at the bar. It could be, even at the airport, networking with a customer. And we measure the revenue opportunities. So it's basically a conversation with a prospect, or it could be with a client talking about a upgrade, for example, of a service. What is the opportunities we're talking about? And we use Salesforce as a CRM. There's a lot of CRM opportunities, but Salesforce is my dashboard to really look at how many opportunities were generated from a trade show and how many became a close one, right? Only takes months.
And for everyone, in terms of tracking, so tracking those conversations, is that after an event, those representatives from the company that were there, that were having these conversations, they'd go back to Salesforce and they'd say, all right, so-and-so, here's, I got their business card. This is what we talked about, blah, blah, blah. They fill it up and that's that. And then you, for the next couple months, you kind of keep track of where that goes, if it converts, if it's lost. Is that it?
So that's what so we create a campaign, right? So we create a campaign on Salesforce, and that allows us basically to track the interaction at an event. And then they're supposed to tag, right? So it's like, I met you at an event. Maybe you're already in the system, so I tag you as somebody who I spoke to at that trade show, and then I'll put in the opportunities. I mean, my discussion with you, can I quantify with an opportunity? Sometimes you don't, because it's somebody who's not going to buy anything from you because they're already a customer. But sometimes it's just an opportunity from that event worth $50,000, for example, and then it takes several touch points to close that deal. So you actually see the journey of a customer through Salesforce. Sales cycle is about 5 to 6 months, depending on the sectors. So my job is really to go back to Salesforce and to the specific event, on a monthly basis, and basically track and see where we are. And what happens is sometimes we go to events and we don't see any return because, it could be the wrong audience. It could be the fact that they're already existing customers who are very satisfied with our products. So why should we be an exhibitor at that event? Maybe we should just attend, or maybe a sponsorship to show support to the association, for example. So it really depends. But that's how it works. We are sales rep after the event within a week to really, enter all that information using campaign name.
When it's not a trade show, when it's your own, let's say that you mentioned too, which is the global, like the sales conference, and what was the other one?
It's an incentive program called President's Club for like top performers.
For top performers internally for the company.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. In terms of the objectives, let's say for the conference one, not the President's Club, but the conference one.
Yes.
Is this what would the metrics in that look like in terms of like a success? What would success look like in that space?
So we will do like a post-event survey purely on satisfaction. Like we want to make sure that, they understood, the message at the Global Sales Conference. Were they satisfied with the program, with the speakers? How is their motivation level after the event? I mean, the whole goal of a sales conference is to expect really, like go high in terms of expectation. I mean, this is a key event for us. This is where we talk about our product. We motivate them. It's a very important retention strategy. So it's all about, messaging and, making sure they understood, why they were here, what they get out of the event. So it's like through surveys. That's how we measure the success of an internal, of that internal conference.
When you do that, are you working in unison with? Are there certain departments within the corporation, within the company that you're constantly working with in unison for those internal events? Is that like the HR? Is that, and are there certain departments that you've realized is really crucial and important to make sure you're kind of in unison and are in the same mindset of what you're trying to do?
So it's like, I would say marketing communications, because they're also one really involved with, content development. So I think it's mainly marketing communication who help designing that survey, finding the right questions. There's also an operational, aspect of the survey. I mean, we also want to make sure that, the location we choose were, exciting. We ask them about future, location. We talk about the hotel. I mean, that's also an important, component of the success.
Is there for those events, like for instance, the one you mentioned, are there external sponsors that you bring to that? Are there strategic partners that make sense to bring on to something that's internally like this? Or does that normally not fall into the picture?
So now, I mean, so we were actually, we were talking about having external partners to speak at our conference for the next one in December. So we're totally open to have, external speakers to present, but we're not bringing vendors or sponsors. It's really just like, it's like an internal event with our sales force. Yeah, so that's what is, but yeah, I think it's great when you can bring, clients on stage and present with you. So we're looking into that for this year's conference.
I've always been curious about this, which is in terms of revenue generating. When you do events, a lot of the time, what you just mentioned, it's about lead generation, it's about conversion, right? Branding, all those beautiful things. Have you ever come across things related to actually generating revenue from the event? Because there are companies out there. So I'll give an example, for instance, like Gainsight. Gainsight is a customer success software. They got their start a number of years ago. While they had the customer success software, they kind of established their thought leadership through this one event that brought a ton of their prospects, but like customer success individuals to attend. And it became, they did it so well that they literally started then selling tickets for it. Then they started also bringing sponsors for it. And like the event itself became a revenue generating on top of prospects already being a part of it. That prospects paying and sponsors paying to be a part of an event like that. Have you experienced that before in any of the companies that you were a part of? Any thoughts related to taking the events world and kind of thinking about generating revenue from it?
So right now at DTN, we actually sponsors those events you're talking about. Like we have, we use our vendor, we sponsor our vendors' events. Or like you said, we have to pay to attend, we have to take a booth. Right. So yeah, so we're like, they're definitely making money out of, it's like a user conference, right? So I love the concept, and I think it's definitely something we should be, looking at in 2025, 2026, how we can have our own events and, bring our suppliers or clients. But to answer your question, so when I was with Accord, which was an insurance technology association, we had our own trade show where we brought in, all the vendors to meet with our members, right? Because it was a trade association. I love that format. That was a 3 day of intense, basically, product development on with users, sponsors. Yes, we charge for everything, right? With sponsorship, exhibitors. We had a program. It was a trade show. So yeah, I'm familiar with that format.
Got it. And so you did that in the past. Do you see that? Is that fairly common with a lot of the companies in your space of like them hosting their own thing? Like think about obviously like Salesforce, right? You mentioned Salesforce. They have Dreamforce, right? That massive conference. Are there players in your space that have done that? And you said like that might be something that we can think about in the future, but is that as common as it sounds, or not a lot of players have the ability to pull off these types of trade shows that they've been able to pull off, right?
So in our industry, I see major players doing it, like Esri, for example, which is, very big software company. So they have a big user conference, but I also see much smaller vendor who also run their, 2 day conference. So it is happening on its, it's small company, big company. Now, obviously, the size of events is different. But in our space, for example, the Esri user conference, that's a really big event for us to be at. And then they have breakout events for the energy resources, for example. So yes, I think it's a great trend when you can, bring, all your customers. The challenge with us is we have 3 different industries. So the question was, do we do one event bringing everybody together, or do we just
Uh,
specifically, so it's just not that
right.
easy. And
And if you
so
do, and if you pick on one, does that kind of eat away from the resources of concentrating specifically on that one? Yeah. And if you do all, does that kind of, does that create a mess in terms of the mixed messaging between all these different
could be.
individuals?
Yeah, it
Right.
could be. I mean, yeah, it could be. I think we'll have to do like separate days on the it's different global market as well, so we'll have to find the right location. But it's definitely a very, I love the idea. I think it's not really about to make money. It will be more about bringing prospects, customers to learn about DTN on there. If you can have sponsors to pay for a few, why not? But
Right.
I
If
think
that helps,
yeah,
why
if that
not?
helps. Like I said, it's super expensive to run events nowadays. So yeah, if we could have vendors we work with coming present with us, I think it's a great idea.
I think you mentioned a little bit of this. I always like covering a little bit about the community building, right? Like engaging a community. You mentioned, for instance, that global conference. How do you approach community building and like networking beyond an event? And let's just not say this doesn't have to be internally, but externally in a lot of the events that you participate in, what have been some of the things you've come across that you say, wow, they did a really great job in kind of creating this cohesive community and allowed for people not just to like network, but like kind of took it to a whole nother level. Are there certain experiences that have come to mind or strategies you've come across that you've seen have worked?
Well, one thing I recently saw after a trade show, and I was very impressed, it was a sponsorship, like a post-event sponsorship report. So really targeting vendors, like exhibitors and sponsors. And they basically they analyzed the number of, target impressions, social media. And they really give you a very good overview of who are the attendees, by function areas, demographic, like a personas of like really who came to the events. And I was very impressed because that allowed me to say, you know what, that was a perfect event for us. And I think next year we should actually have a bigger presence, right? So I was very impressed with that. I know some of the trade shows do like follow-up webinars where they continue the conversation with a keynote speaker, for example, through a webinar or within a week after the event. I love the fact when they record their sessions, make it available to attendees who couldn't make it, for example. So that has been really, really successful. We're also trying to do the same, record some session to make it available to to our employees for the sales conference. So yeah, that's what I'm saying.
What are I'd like to jump into a little bit in terms of like challenges, right? Every one of us, no matter how long we've been in the industry and how much we've learned, we still face many different challenges. I'm curious to know, like, what's a challenge that you're currently seeing within it could be your space or with the event space as a whole, that it could be a challenge that it's kind of like it's the same challenge, right? It's the same challenge I've experienced the last 20 years in my space. But what's a particular obstacle or challenge that you're facing right now that you don't need to have a solution for, but it's something that you're going through, or something that you're like, if someone can help us figure this thing out, like what could it be?
Yeah, it's a tough question. If we think about strategy, for example, I think one of the challenges to tell a sales team who has been going to the same event for the last 10 years, or let's say in Miami in February, for example, like a big trade show, and you're going to have to explain to them that, instead of sending 20 people to run a booth, we're not going to do that anymore because we're going to send 5 people and we might be a sponsor because it doesn't make sense. It's really hard, right? Because even if you provide them with the data of why you think we should do that, I think sometimes it's really, it's challenging to be with a group of people who they're used to some things I've done for 10 years. And then suddenly you're kind of disrupting, and, you'll present other ideas and they'll be like, I really need to be at that event. That's where I've been for the last 10 years and I have all my customers. So to help data, I think when you show them the data, trying to explain where you're coming from and why you're suggesting we're doing that, for the benefit of the company, so that's one challenge, right? It's, especially when you're new with a company, you're trying to really change things, that's very difficult.
Have there been any vendors or technologies out there that you've come across that have been very helpful when it comes to providing more clarity with data? Obviously, you mentioned the CRMs like Salesforce or whatever to keep track of things, but are there other things that you've come across that do help you within that space lately? Or
no, yeah, like for AOI, for example, a measurement, I haven't seen, some a system that's really where you will just plug in the information or maybe integrate with Salesforce, and I haven't seen that, like some type of system that could provide you a very quick picture of where we are. Right now it's a lot of analysis, right? I look at Salesforce, I export the data, I do a reporting. So, when you do a lot of events, it takes a lot of time, but you're always looking for best way to automate, that type of analysis.
Have you, now that AI is, is everywhere?
Yeah.
Any thoughts related to some use cases that you've already come across with AI within this space itself that you think is really helpful? Some challenges that might have occurred because of this introduction of this type of technology? What are your thoughts around this?
So for AI, I find it, really useful when it comes to analyzing data. So to give an example, for the Global Sales Conference, we sent out a survey, right? You are asking me about how do I measure success of our sales conference. So we sent out a survey, and basically, I've used AI to really analyze all the survey coming back. So you download basically all your responses, your questions, your answers, and you will have a very thorough analysis of, what percentage, what's the feedback. So that's what, good example of how, I think that AI helped us, right? Just to save time and analyzing data when you have, hundreds of survey coming back.
That makes a ton of sense. And has there been a particular AI software that has been helpful for you in that, or are there?
For me, I use ChatGPT too. Just that's the one
just
I've
drop
used.
it on ChatGPT.
Exactly. That's worked out, fine. I know some of my peers are using AI to generate some content ideas. We're not there yet. I think I have to be very careful when it comes to generating content.
Right.
We're like events. It's all about people, right? So we're service industry. So I think AI will help, like saving time, analyzing data, automating, some of the tasks. So I think it's really important to know how to use it, but I've just been also very careful with, with the information coming back, especially on content development.
Are there any upcoming events about DTN? Any upcoming projects that you want to make sure that we share and with anyone, with our audience?
Like just talking about AI, for example. So when we have a global sales conference, we bring in outside speakers, right? And AI obviously, is huge. It's one of our priority for content development. So it's one thing we're trying to do is really to find out AI speakers who will be familiar with our industries, and we can actually use a few case studies to demonstrate how we can use AI. So that would be one thing where it would be great to have some feedback from the group.
I love that. From within those segments. Yes. And which is the conference that this would make most sense for you?
The Global Sales Conference, like this is where we bring all the sales team together once a year, and we talk about product, and we talk about customers and behavioral customer service. So having ideas of somebody that they heard at a conference, at a trade show, who were really right on spot when it comes to AI. Somebody will really work with us to design a session. That would be really a big project right now we're working on.
Does that, when it comes to speakers, how much of time does that take from your end when you're doing a conference like this? Are there plenty of logistical challenges that occur within the world of finding, the right speakers, booking the right speakers, and making sure that they're delivering what they say they're going to deliver? How does that world look like?
I mean, content development is a big piece of a sales conference, right? I mean, you have operations, you have, the logistic, but content development is really important. And so we're right in the middle of it, right? I mean, we normally do like a 6 months planning, but the first thing is we have to come up with a theme on a name for the conference, right? And then after, once you have the themes, then you start designing your program, and you start plugging in sessions, speakers. I mean, it is very challenging, right? I mean, because you have to identify the right people. So you use, third-party speakers bureau, your contacts, your peers, even salespeople that went to conferences. I love when they come back and say, hey, those are amazing speakers that talk about. So it's reaching out to a lot of people on kind of, analyzing what's coming back, and do like a short list, kind of, create like a short list of speakers, and you will present per session. So it is challenging, and then it's a 3-day conference. So we have to, every year the format change. It could be breakout, back to a main session. It could be workshop. But content is definitely extremely important when it comes to a global sales conference.
In that journey, is there something that you wish could be made a bit easier? Whether it's having much better access, which is kind of what you mentioned, which is like, if AI experts that are in our field, let us know. So it sounds like just the discovery phase of potential candidates and experts seems like can be a challenging aspect of it. But are there other challenges, or is that one of the biggest challenges within that whole journey and life cycle?
In terms of content, in terms of a speaker and content development, I mean, I mean, I would love to have a system where you plug in what you're looking for, right? I mean, I'm looking for a speaker in AI. I could talk about energy trading, for example, in the US, so there's a lot of speakers out there. And they all work for Google, or they all come from like this big tech company. So, but you never know, like, it's hard, right? I mean, they send you links, and maybe you've seen their profile.
But you got to see how they actually perform, right? Like one
exactly,
thing is
yeah, exactly. And also we're looking for somebody who's going to work with us ahead of time to develop that session. It's not just about, yeah, we'll sign a contract, see you, December 4th at the hotel. It's really, let's do a call with the team. Let's talk about our clients. So together we're developing a session. Not all the speakers are willing to do that. Sometimes they have a very a straightforward pitch, and they don't want to deviate too much. But we're looking for somebody who's going to work with us, open to help us, and then present a very customized presentation.
Are there platforms out there that help you with the finding these experts? Are there things out there you've come across that have been helpful in terms of this whole life cycle when it comes to bringing the right experts to develop the content?
So you have third-party companies that their job is to help you find, speakers, speakers bureau, for example. So they specialize in specific industries. So you could have inspirational speaker, tech speaker, governments, military. So you have a lot of, there's a lot of vendors out there. So these are the ones who are supposed to really, they have a pool of speakers and experts, and they're really helping you based on your criteria to recommend,
Got it. And they're kind of like small shop agencies that concentrate on that.
Kind of. I mean, I think there are probably 2 or 3 big players, but yeah, that's there's plenty of them. Yes.
No, that's interesting. François, I want to be respectful of the time. Anything else that we didn't cover that you'd love to make sure that you share, that you like to share?
Well, one thing you were asking me about, how do you measure the success of an event when you're a sponsor?
Oh, yes.
So when you're a sponsor and you don't exhibit, it's a little bit difficult, right? Because you're not engaging with directly at the booth with customers. It's
You're
really
not
about
physically there.
exactly.
Representatives there.
Exactly. So one thing that we use to measure the, kind of the return on investments. So we will look at targeted impressions. So for example, let's say we sponsor an app at a trade show, but we're, like you said, we're not physically there. Like I want to know from the organizer, how many people are at the conference? How many people develop the app and saw my logo? If we have a speaker at the conference, I want to know how many people were in the room. If our logo was, on a board as a top sponsor, for example, like how many people passed by that board and saw our logo? And at the end of the day, or the trade show, like I want to know how many thousands of impressions I've generated through a sponsorship. It's hard to monetize, but at least I can compare with other events. So, sometimes we go to trade show with 5,000 people. Like I'm expecting a minimum of like 50,000 impressions, right? At the end of a 2-day trade show, for example. So this is just like one thing I mentioned was, it's interesting, right? We'll look at impressions for specific sponsorship, for example.
Got it. That makes sense. And aside from impressions, are there things that you should avoid? Are there things that you learn throughout the years that, okay, try not to follow these type of metrics, that sometimes those are the ones that they're sharing with you, but might not be as accurate as you think they are?
Yeah, I mean, it's like when I look at sponsorship, I love a sponsorship where I can engage, or when I can get the list of attendees, for example. I know it's hard, but like a sponsorship of a receptions, for example, like I would love to find out who's the audience going to the reception, right? Like maybe they have to register ahead of time. So maybe I can have access to that list and send them some type of information, before the event to welcome them to the reception. I think the mobile app is awesome because you're engaging with people. You can push out notification if they let you do that. The badge sponsorship, I mean, you're looking at a badge constantly when you talk to people. So I think the pitfall will be a sponsorship that doesn't really have that have no impact. Like when they have like other sponsors, I've seen that you sponsor a coffee break with like 2 other companies. I think this is a waste of, it has zero impact, right? I mean, you're sharing the sponsorship, the branding is maybe on a coffee cup that people don't even look.
Right.
So like it's really like a low impact sponsorship, like the breakfast, unless you can speak to the breakfast, right? Or welcome people. But I will say the networking break, for example, the coffee breaks, or like you just have to be careful, like what else can you get from that sponsorship? And sometimes it's just branding, so it's just limited.
Makes sense. Francois, thank you so much. I really appreciate
No
you
problem.
and appreciate the time. Enjoy the rest of the week in your hometown there in New Jersey. If there's anything that we can be of additional help within the community, please let us know. We'll make sure to include in our outreach message what you mentioned about any particular AI experts within these particular sectors that interest our founders and they've come across that they really enjoyed. But at the end of the day, I just appreciate you sharing your time and giving back time to with all of us. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it a lot. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. All right, enjoy the rest of your day.
Take care.
We'll talk.
Bye. Take care. Bye-bye.